Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. Last week, Graig at MidLife Sports Cards asked everyone who are the top tier Hall of Famers in the hobby. Which players have the most relevance or popularity within the hobby, and to some extent, which players will hold hobby relevance in the future. And I did a video response where I attempted to list players from the four major sports that I thought currently have more hobby popularity than other players, and players that would be popular within the hobby in the future. And I appreciate all of your comments to my video and pointed out some shortcomings in some of my lists. I knew the lists I put together for football, basketball, and hockey could quite possibly miss some very popular players within those sports within the hobby. And a lot of you pointed out, especially for basketball, that Bill Russell was a name that I should have had on my list, and I do agree with all of you. And to some extent, I missed Kobe Bryant as well. And some of you pointed out that there were some other hockey players that are very popular in the hobby. It's not an area that I collect or know much about the history of hockey. So again, I appreciate all of your comments to my video. Well, for this week, Graig has a sort of a follow-up question to his question from last week. Now, in the description of this video, I will have a link to Graig's video from earlier this week, in which he goes over all of your responses to his question from last week and then poses this follow-up question for everyone. So, does hobby relevance of a player impact the cards that I collect? Does the fact that a player may be more popular or less popular, either now or in the future, impact which cards I collect? And my general answer to that question is no. It doesn't impact which cards I want to add to my collection. But I have four general reasons why, at least for now, that is the case. And the first one is, when I embarked on building a vintage baseball card collection close to 5 years now, I had to make a decision on what cards I wanted to collect. There are so many vintage baseball cards out there that I needed to have some sort of focus. Now, my general focus, and it is a rather large focus to have, is I wanted to collect Hall of Famers. And whether they are popular Hall of Famers, non-popular Hall of Famers, I wanted to build a Hall of Fame vintage baseball card collection. And another decision I had to make, and one that may change in the future, but for now, I had to decide, do I want to focus on quality or quantity? And I've made the decision at this point, things may change in the future, but I want to focus on quantity over quality. So that also impacts which which players that I want to collect cards for. Case in point, one of my mini projects that I'm working on is my 100 cards for $10,000 list. And on that list are players such as Harmon Killebrew, Jim Palmer, Frank Robinson, and some other players that may not be as popular today or in the future in the hobby compared to other players. But they're players that I want to add to my collection and hopefully someday complete a playing day run of those players. The second thing is that I don't look at my collection or the cards that I buy as an investment. Now, I'm sure like all of you, you'd love to have your cards in your collection increase in value over time. But to me, that's not a concern. At this point in my life, I'm not looking to sell any of my cards. when or if I ever get to that point, yeah, I would love to have my collection have some value and increased value over time. And if I never sell any of my cards and they get passed on to my son, would I like those cards to have some value for him? Sure, but that's not the focus of what cards I add to my collection, thinking that, all right, this is going to be a popular player in the future, and his cards may hold value or increase value more than, say, another card. So I'm only going to buy certain players as opposed to others because I'm thinking of long-term appreciation of value of my collection. That's not a concern of mine. So that's another reason why, for me, it doesn't really matter about a player's hobby relevance or popularity in which cards I pick up. Another third reason is that for those players that aren't as popular within the hobby, I can pick them up for a lot less than cards of players that are extremely popular. Going out and buying a Harmon Killebrew card is going to cost me a lot less than a Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays card. And so I'm able to stretch my hobby budget by picking up some of those cards that are cheaper, that not a lot of people within the hobby are focused on collecting. So I can pick them up for less. Now, you may say that, hey, cards of Harmon Killebrew are already, a lot less than some of the other players, and how much lower can some of those card prices go? They're already fairly inexpensive. I don't know, but at least for now, I'm able to stretch my hobby budget by buying some of those cards of those players and adding them to my collection, as opposed to just focusing on some of the more popular players. And finally, again, tying into my whole budget, being on a limited budget and focusing on quantity over quality, I don't really have the luxury of saying, hey, I only want to collect cards of some of the big name players within the hobby. If I wanted to add a Babe Ruth card to my collection, most likely I would have to save up for an entire year to be able to afford one Playing Days Babe Ruth card. And okay, well, maybe not Babe Ruth. Maybe that's out of my range. You can go down to some of the earlier Mickey Mantle cards. Some of these players, even in lower grades, you're looking at 4 figures, sometimes even 5 figures to buy one of their cards. I just don't have the budget to be able to focus on just those players and build a large vintage collection. Now, in the future, if my hobby budget 10x's, 20x's, 30x's, that may change for me. If I have a lot more money to focus on my hobby, I may decide that, hey, now I can afford to buy a Ty Cobb card, a Babe Ruth card, a 49 Leaf Jackie Robinson, and add those cards to my collection, maybe multiple cards throughout a year, adding to my collection, and still have some funds available to build a in general, large vintage collection. Right now, I don't have that luxury. So again, things may change for me in the future, and these examples I give are, just for me. You may have a different philosophy for your collection. You may want to have a more quality collection where you focus on just those players that are very popular in the hobby and will remain popular within the hobby in the decades to come. And if you do focus on that, chances are your collection will continue to grow in value, and the cards that you have in your collection will be ones that collectors in the future would be interested in owning. So, Greg, a great follow-up question to your also great question from the week before. Would love to know, all of you that are watching this, what are your thoughts on hobby popularity of a particular player, whether it be baseball or basketball, football, hockey, whatever you collect? Are you more focused on the player's popularity in terms of which cards you add to your collection? Do you focus more on quantity, which would sort of mean that you may have less focus, or the player's hobby relevance is less of a factor to you like it is for me? And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.